Didn't want to read it, receiving it from the Catholics. Mine couldn't conceive it, believing it from the Baptists. The Hebrews wasn't white, so they running all out of actors. Searching through the chapters and seeing they got it backwards. Kindly tell the truth and the rage in them only escalated. Every word they hated, but none want to debate it. So what I'm supposed to do? Let them fake it until they make it. Nah, bowing to the idols, my power's vowing to take them down. Non-believers smoking while Christians drinking the potion. Everybody's high on that lie when the demons spoken. Alive on the rival with Bruce, we all awoke with vision kinda blurry, he's realigning the focus. Gotta tell the truth and confuse the room or it clears it out. Peers don't wanna hear, so I'm filled with a lot of fears and doubts. You gave me the heart, so it's time to put the action in. Praises that I gave you on earth will only be practiced.
If the truth is what you see, then there's no need to look further than the words written on stone. Find your grace when you believe the body of the one without sin being hung on the cross, living the life that you should lead. Thankful every day that I live and bring tears, giving praise to the Most High. Giving praise to the Most High.
All right. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Before we get started, if my audio and video is good, someone please put a 1 in the comments. Before we get to reading, we're coming from Proverbs chapter 18. We're going to read that for a devotion. But before we get started, someone put a 1 in the comments. My mic, yeah, shut that door. The public is loud today. Public is really, really loud. Shut the door. All right. So, Shabbat shalom, brother Chick. Good to see you, fam. Says I'm good over in YouTube. Akira says I'm good in YouTube. All right. Shabbat shalom. Let's go ahead and get to the reading. We're gonna get into this lesson. We're talking about excuse me, we're getting to the conversation of the Sabbath. We've spoken at length ever since 2024 about the Sabbath, but we never really went into detail. So it's kind of like a message for those who don't know how important the Sabbath is to the Most High, how you're out of bounds, how you're in sin by profaning it. You know, it's an important thing to the Most High. So we're going to have to give you some tools, all right, to use biblically when people are telling you that the Sabbath or the laws are done away with. You can do what you want to do on the Sabbath, and things of that nature, like the Sabbath was changed to Sunday because Christ rose on Sunday morning, and things of that nature. We have to address all of those biblical fallacies, right? All of those non-truths. So we'll deal with that. But first, let's go ahead and get into the scriptures. Let's go ahead and get into the scriptures. Here. Share screen. All right, coming from Proverbs chapter 18. All right, it says, the separatist seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound wisdom. A fool does not delight in understanding, but in uncovering his own heart. When a wrong one comes, scorn comes too, and with shame comes reproach. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a flowing stream. It is not good to show partiality to the wrong, or to turn aside the righteous and right ruling. A fool's lips enter into strife, and his mouth calls for blows. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are the snare of his life. The words of a slanderer are like delicacies, and they go down into the inner parts of the heart. Also, he who is slack in his work is a brother of a master destroyer. The name of Yahweh is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are safe. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his own imagination. Before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty, and before esteem is humility. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him. The spirit of a man sustains him in sickness, but who does bear a broken spirit? The heart of the understanding one gets knowledge, and the ears of the wise seek knowledge. A man's gifts make room for him, and brings him before great men. The first to state his own case seems right, until another comes and examines him. A lot settles disputes, and separates between the mighty. A brother transgressed against is a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a citadel. A man's stomach is satisfied from the fruit of his mouth. He is satisfied with the increase of his lips. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those loving it eat its fruits. He who has found a wife has found good and receives favor from Yahweh. The poor speaks beseechingly, but the rich answers fiercely. A man of many friends might come to ruin, but there is a loving one who sticks closer than a brother. All right. The Most High's word is blessed, of course. So let's go ahead and grab this Sabbath lesson. We're going to get in. We're going to try to get out real quick. Hopefully not keep you too long, but we're going to dig deep, right? Make sure as I move, I can still be heard real good. All right. So let's deal with it. The true Sabbath. The true Sabbath, why, how and why it was changed. Romans 15:4 tells us to do what? Let's get that real quick, right? Let's get Romans chapter 15 and verse 4, just to get in here and start not the debate, but to start telling the truth, right? All right, it says, for whatever was written aforetime, right? Let's get it in the KJV. Highlight it for you, right? It says, for whatever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. So what does that mean? Whatever was written aforetime, right? And that means when somebody comes along and changes something that the Bible is clear about, you have to examine that thing biblically, right? We're going to get into who changed the Sabbath, right? Did they have the authority to change the Sabbath? And if not, why do people still profane the Sabbath? Why do they subject themselves to Sunday worship and not honor what the Most High said to honor? Okay, if we're reading the scriptures and dealing with it from the biblical perspective, or if we're dealing with the 10 commandments, you know what I'm saying? Those which people say, those were written with the fingers of Elohim, so they're to be observed. Well, the fourth commandment in that is the Sabbath day, right? And he tells you not to profane it, right? Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 13, he says, he who despised the word will be destroyed, but he who fears the commandment will be rewarded. Okay. He who despises the word. Now, you got people who despise the word when the scriptures tell you to honor the Sabbath day and keep it set apart, right? They despise that part because, hey, you know what I'm saying? Church is popping. Church is where it's at. You know what I'm saying? So let's deal with it. Let's deal with the Sabbath. Today, I want to answer the question which so many listeners have been concerned about since our first broadcast on the Sabbath question. How did the change take place, substituting Sunday for Saturday as the day of worship, right? This is probably one of the most disturbing religious questions among thinking so-called Christians today. Unfortunately, the issue is not examined publicly very often for reasons that we'll consider today, right? But multitudes have wondered when, how, and why the change came about. We have established in previous broadcasts that the Bible itself speaks with absolute consistency on the subject of the Sabbath, right? So we have to bring it out, okay? People are what? When it comes to the Sabbath, lost, confused, unsure, unclear, perplexed, right? Disoriented, bewildered, right? Why is this thing such a point of contention, right? Why haven't we settled the matter? And why do people assume that it's done away and we can do a whole lot of things that the scriptures told us not to do? Let's deal with it. The enduring legacy of the Sabbath, a testament of unchanging doctrine, right? This doctrine has not changed, will not change. Even when we get to the kingdom, right? We're still going to be keeping the Sabbath and honoring the Sabbath. It is what it is. The concept of the Sabbath has been a cornerstone of religious practice since ancient times, holding profound significance in both the Old and New Testament. All right. Despite various debates and conflicts that arose among early believers, the observance of the Sabbath remains a consistent, unaltered tradition. This post explores the unchanging nature of the Sabbath, its scriptural foundations, and its continued relevance. Right. A lot of people assume that doesn't matter anymore, and we can do this, that, and the third. No, it's a continued relevance. Even today it's relevant, right? It sets you apart from the world. But let's get it. Scriptural consistency in the Sabbath doctrine, right? In both the Old and New Testament, all right, there is not a shadow of variation in the doctrine of the Sabbath. The seventh day, Saturday, all right, known to many, all right, is the only day ever designated by the term Sabbath in the entire Bible. From the creation account in Genesis to the laws given at Mount Sinai, the seventh-day Sabbath stands as a perpetual sign of Elohim's covenant with his people, right? So a lot of people assume that they are the Most High's people, and you know what I'm saying, he loves us, and God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, all of that. But these same people don't want to keep the Sabbath day. Understand that. All right, let me read that part again. From creation in Genesis to the laws given at Mount Sinai, the seventh-day Sabbath stands as a perpetual sign of Elohim's covenant with his people. All right, the commandment to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy or set apart in Exodus 20:8, underscores its enduring importance. This consistency extends into the New Testament, where Yahushua himself upheld the Sabbath through his teachings and practices. Right, so let's deal with Christ Yahushua on the matter, right? Who the world ignorantly knows as Jesus Christ, right? It says Yahushua and the Sabbath, a model of observance. Not only was Yahushua a perfect example in observing the weekly seventh-day Sabbath, but all his disciples followed the same pattern after Yahushua had gone back to the Father, right? How many of you knew that? Or how many of you paid attention to that when you substituted Sunday for, the Sabbath? It is what it is. Yahushua adherence to the Sabbath is well documented in the Gospels. He not only observed it, but also clarified its true purpose, emphasizing mercy and compassion over rigid legalism, right? And we can get that in Mark chapter 2, verses 27 to 28. His disciples, following his example, continued to honor the Sabbath after his ascension, gathering on the Sabbath day for worship and fellowship, right? The silence of change in apostolic writings says, yet not intimation. All right, yet no intimation of any change of the day is made. The Apostle Paul, who wrote the pages of counsel about lesser issues of the Jew and the Gentile conflicts, had not one word to say about the controversy over the worship day. Right, he didn't have one word to say about it. Paul's epistles address numerous issues within the early assemblies, from circumcision to dietary laws. However, he remained silent on any controversy regarding the Sabbath. This absence suggests a clear continuity, right, in the practice of the Sabbath observance amongst early believers. All right, if a change from the seventh day to the first day of the week had occurred, it would have undoubtedly sparked significant debate, warranting extensive discussion in his letters. But Paul never addressed it. And there was a lot of things that people even still today argue about, and they use Paul to defend, their Christian belief, but the Sabbath was never an issue. It never was brought up, right? It is what it is. So let's deal with the weightier matters of worship, right? Circumcision, foods offered to idols, other Hebrew customs were readily challenged by early Gentile believers in the assemblies, right? But the weightier matters of the weekly worship was never an issue. Why? For the simple reason that no change was made from the historic seventh day of the Old Testament times, from creation itself, right? The fact that weekly worship on the Sabbath was never contested among early believers highlights its foundational role, right? The Sabbath, established at creation and reaffirmed through the commandments, remained a divinely instituted day of rest and worship. Its significance transcended cultural and doctrinal differences, uniting Hebrew and Gentile believers in a shared tradition, right? In some cases, but it is what it is. If you are of the Most High's chosen stock, you ought to be keeping the Sabbath day. What the Gentiles see you doing, if they follow you, well, good for them. But it is incumbent upon you to honor the Sabbath day and keep it set apart, right? That means it's not like any other day. It's not a free day, right? So let's get to the conclusion of that matter. The unbroken chain of the Sabbath observance, right? From the Old Testament through to the new so-called New Testament, exemplifies a profound continuity in faith practices. Despite the myriad of changes and challenges faced by early believers, the Sabbath endured as a testament to an unchanging divine mandate. As modern believers reflect on their practices, the Sabbath stands as a powerful reminder of the continuity of faith and enduring legacy of divine rest, right? In a world of constant change, the Sabbath remains a steadfast symbol of our connection to creation, our Creator, and the timeless principles of rest and worship. Its unaltered observance through the ages speaks to its foundational role in the spiritual life of believers, affirming the importance of pausing to honor and remember the sacred. All right, honoring the Father, obeying the Father. Those things are important, right? It's time to pause. And for further reading, you can get a book by Samuel Bachiochi, right? It's called The Sabbath in Scripture and History, right? And then The Sabbath, an Ancient Practice by Dan B. Allender, and From Sabbath to Lord's Day, a biblical, historical, and theological investigation by D.A. Carson. So those are just some tools for you to go back and do some more research, because we ask you not only to read your Bible, but to study your Bible, get these truths. Now we have to transition into why and how it was changed, right? Your enemy, the devil and Satan, right? He is here to Shalakia, deceive the world, is what I'm trying to say. He's here to deceive the world. And one of the things he uses to deceive the world is changing scripture, right? Acting like, he didn't say what he said in Isaiah 14:14. He's going to ascend above the clouds and be like the Most High. A lot of things look like it's from the Most High, but it is not, right? So you going and profaning the Sabbath day, but going to church on Sunday is one of those matters that we have to address and deal with, right? So let's get it. No Change documented. I pretty much read all of that for you. All right. So let's get it. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20 tells us something very, very important. It says, woe to them that call evil good and good evil, right? They think Sunday is good, all right? And it's not. It's actually evil. It's actually mimicking or from the creation of sun worship, right? It's adopted from sun worship. So it says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter, so on and so forth, right? And as we read in Romans 15:4, it says, for whatever was written aforetime, okay, was written for our learning, that through endurance and engagement of the scriptures we might have hope. All right. So there's no way for you to get where you're trying to get to by going outside the scriptures, right? Doing what the Most High told you not to do. That doesn't work, right? So history gives us a couple of clues. And if I'm talking real fast, it's because I got a lot to go through. Got a lot of information to push through. And then you can always go back and rewatch, pause and rewind. You can always hit me up in Messenger, ask me questions, hit me up in the comments, during the live. It is what it is. We'll deal with it. All right, so let's get into the history. History gives some clues. If the change did not take place in the scriptures or through the influence of the apostles, when and how did it happen? In order to understand this, we must understand what happened in that early church, right? Soon after the apostles passed off the stage of action. Paul had prophesied that apostasy would take place soon after his departure. He said there would be a falling away from the truth, right? One doesn't have to read very far in early church history to see just how that prophecy was fulfilled. Gnosticism began to rise up under the influence of philosophers who sought to reconcile Christianity with paganism. All right. And it really wasn't called Christianity. It was the people who were followers of Christ were called those in Hebrew, the Messianics, and then in other contexts, those who follow the way. Right. So I don't want you to get confused with that statement, trying to reconcile Christianity with paganism. But I digress. It is what it is. At the same time, the strong anti-Jewish sentiment became more widespread, right? They were calling themselves Judaizers. If you did what the scripture said to do, instead of following Emperor Constantine in the Roman Catholic Church, you were called a Judaizer. And then when Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, right, they were putting folks to death who followed Christ, right, and who honored the Sabbath day and those things, right? It is what it is. All right, so very speculative interpretations began to appear regarding some of the great doctrines of Christ and the apostles, and that's when they had the Council of Nicaea, and then they created, the doctrine of Christianity, basically. and then said this was canon, that wasn't canon. It is what it is. So let's deal with the version of Constantine, right? Because this is how this whole thing took place. By the time Constantine was established as the emperor of Rome in the early 4th century, there was a decided division in the church as a result of these factors. I think most of you know that Constantine was the first so-called Christian emperor of the Roman Empire, right? The story of his conversion has become very well known to students of ancient history. He was marching forth this is a fabrication too, because he told this story some 8-9 years. Don't quote me on that, but a long time after this whole situation happened, right? He revealed this so-called dream or vision to a bishop who wrote it down as if it happened yesterday, but it is what it is. All right, it's a fabricated story, but anyways, the fabricated story is talking about his conversion. He was so-called marching to fight the battle at Milvian Bridge when he had some kind of vision and saw a flaming cross in the sky, and underneath the so-called cross was the Latin words meaning "in this sign conquer." All right, Constantine took this as an omen that he should be a Christian, and his army as well. He decided all his pagan soldiers, he declared all his pagan soldiers to be Christians, and they became very zealous to build up the power and prestige of the church. That's how that whole story played itself out. All right, he fed that to the masses and they believed it. So through his influence, great blocks of pagans were taken into the Christian ranks. But friends, they were still pagan at heart, and they brought in much of the paraphernalia of sun worship to which they continued to be devoted. We mentioned in a previous broadcast about the adoption of Christmas and Easter into the church and things of that nature. At the same time, many other customs were Christianized and appropriated into the practice of the church as well. So a lot of the things that people assume was in the Bible, and that's why we made this conversation plain and clear a couple of Sabbaths ago, that a lot of things that we grew up believing was in the Bible actually wasn't in the Bible, and a lot of the things that we practice were told in the scriptures not to practice. It is what it is. That's where I buck against people's pastors all the time. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to your pastor. And those pastors who I have had the privilege of conversing with, they would agree with me, right? But the thing that ticks me off is that they'll agree with me and say, yeah, what I said is correct, so on and so forth. But then to turn around and be like, but the people ain't ready, right? And won't tell you. I have a problem with those type of people. They know that you're supposed to be honoring the Sabbath day, and they know that the things that they do in Christianity is sun worship. But I digress. Let's keep it moving. All right. So getting back to Constantine and this whole situation, at the time, the cult of Mithraism or sun worship was the official religion of the Roman Empire. It stood as the greatest competitor to the new so-called Christian religion. It had its own organization, temples, priesthoods, robes, and everything. It also had an official worship day on which special homage was given to the sun, right? That day was called the Venerable Day of the Sun. It was the first day of the week, and from it we get our name Sunday. If you didn't know that, that should be common sense, but it is what it is. When Constantine pressed his pagan hordes into the church, they were observing the day of the sun for their adoration of the sun god. It was their special holy day, right? In order to make it more convenient for them to make the change to the new religion, Constantine accepted their day of worship, Sunday, instead of the Hebrew Sabbath, which had been observed by Yahushua and his disciples. Remember that the way had been prepared for this already, by the increasing anti-Hebrew feeling against those who were accused of putting Yahushua to death, right? So those people that were saying, hey, you guys killed Christ, so we worship him, and we're not going to do what you guys do, right? But the scriptures give no change in it, so you shouldn't change with it, right? And this is the thing that people don't really understand. They were pagans bringing in their pagan traditions into what they call the truth, and then they used the scriptures to coincide and create this religion called Christianity. It is what it is. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig, right? You can put yourself in a dress and a hat, but you're still a pagan. You're still worshiping the sun on Sunday. So here's the thing. Job chapter 14 and verse 4 asks a very important question that a lot of people who claim they believe and follow the Most High and believe in the Bible and they love God and, you know what I'm saying, he's their end all and be all, they need to understand Job 14:4. It asks a question that says, who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one, right? That whole Sunday worship thing is not clean. And you can't worship the Most High the way that the other nations worship their gods. He's not with that. But anyways, let's get back. He says those feelings would naturally condition many so-called Christians to swing away from something which was held religiously by the Jews, right? Since they assume you killed my, you know what I'm saying, you killed my God, right? It is what it is. It says it is therefore easier to understand how the change was imposed on Christianity through a strong civil law issued by Constantine as the emperor of Rome. All right, the very wording of that law, the Edict of Milan, like we stated earlier, by the way, can be found in any reliable encyclopedia. This is something you can actually go and research, the Edict of Milan. Those early Christians feeling that the Jews should not be followed any more than necessary were ready to swing away from the Sabbath, which was kept by the Jews, right? They wanted to get away from keeping the Sabbath because those people who they accused of killing Christ kept the Sabbath, right? They wanted to do something totally different, and they assumed that the Most High would be okay with that, right? And not only that, when they wanted to separate from the Jews, and this is another documented history that you can go and search up in the encyclopedia, but even when they started worshiping pagan Easter, right? When they even wanted to start celebrating Easter instead of the Passover, right? They still had to look to the Jews to find out when the time was going to be for them to celebrate their Easter, right? And one of the things that they did to get away from them was to create their own lunar system. So when they would predict when Easter would be, that's why you got Easter sometimes landing in March, and then sometimes it's either, you know what I'm saying, in late April or something. You know what I'm saying? They go by the still sun worship, but the sun equinox, right? Or the spring equinox, when the day and night is both equal, so on and so forth. And then they pedal it from there to calculate when to celebrate Easter. But there was a time when they still had to look at the Jews and be like, yo, hey, when are y'all celebrating Passover? Okay, now we know when to celebrate Easter, right? You can find that in your encyclopedia as well, but it's all still sun worship. So anyway, still dealing with the historical accounts. It says, here are historians, Catholics and Protestants speaking in harmony about what actually took place in the 4th century. After Constantine made the initial pronouncement and legal decree about the change, the Catholic Church reinforced that act in one church council after another. For this reason, many official statements from the Catholic sources are made, claiming that the church made the change from Saturday to Sunday, right? It wasn't there. They don't give credit to Emperor Constantine, but now they give all of the authority to the Catholic Church. And a lot of people don't know that word Catholic means universal, talking about the universal church. So every so-called church denomination falls under the umbrella of the Catholic Church. And that's why they celebrate and go to church on Sunday and they forsake the Sabbath. But it is what it is. Before I read these statements, I shall refer to one from the Encyclopedia Britannica under the article Sunday. Notice, it was Constantine who first made a law for the proper observance of Sunday, who appointed that it should be regularly celebrated throughout the Roman Empire. Now you can check these statements in your own encyclopedias or go to the library and look into other historical sources, right? And this is one of the things that people deal with, confirmation bias. What is confirmation bias? Because we can give you encyclopedia references and we can give you these facts and figures and so on and so forth, but people will still go to church on Sunday. Why? Because the pastor said you don't have to do that. It's the Lord's Day, you know what I'm saying? And we'll address that. So they have what's known as confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is the tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that is consistent with one's own existing beliefs. Regardless of what the facts say, you believe it this way. All right. This biased approach to decision making is largely unintentional and often results in ignoring inconsistent information. Existing beliefs can include one's expectation in a given situation and predictions about a particular outcome. People are especially likely to process information to support their own beliefs when the issue is highly important or self-relevant. Right. So there was an apologist that was trying to defend sun worship or Sunday worship, going to church on Sunday, saying that we didn't have to honor the Sabbath day anymore. You know what I'm saying? We're under grace, you know what I'm saying, and mercy, and you know what I'm saying? It's all good. Just show up on Sunday, give God praise, but you ain't gotta listen and do what nothing he said to do. It is what it is. All right, it's instant. He says this. He says it's interesting to note when the Sabbath was first absorbed, that God first absorbed the Sabbath in Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 through 3. He says, after completing the 6 days of creation, he rested on the seventh day. But the first mention of man observing the Sabbath isn't until Exodus 16 and 23, hundreds, if not thousands of years later. All right, he says it was in the desert of sin between Elim and Mount Sinai, right? The same place where the Lord gave quail and manna for the Israelites to eat, right? While it's true that God himself rested in Genesis 2 and 3, he did not institute the Sabbath for man until the time of Moses at Mount Sinai, after many generations man had lived on the earth, right? So this is the apologetics view, or a defense against honoring the Sabbath day and defending going to church on Sunday, right? So did he just say that? You know what I'm saying? Yes, he did shake my head, right? He continued. He says, in fact, I was amazed to learn. Did I just read this? No. Oh, yeah. He says, in fact, I was amazed to learn there is no record of man keeping the Sabbath all the way from Genesis 2 and 3 to Exodus 16 and 23, a very long span of time. It says, why did God wait so long to give the Sabbath law to man? See, this is why, you know what I'm saying, if you don't have the whole Bible, you have no Bible, and you need to get from under these people who call themselves pastors and want to defend doing what the Most High, you know what I'm saying, said not to do. It is what it is. But he asks this question, or he looks at it from this perspective. He says, why did God wait so long to give the Sabbath law to man? We're going to give it to you plain and simple and show you that he did not. That's not the case. The Sabbath always continued. But he says, Sinai happened many generations after Adam and Eve. The Sabbath law didn't come to Enoch, Methuselah, or Noah. Those are all lies, and we'll deal with that. The Sabbath wasn't given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are lies, and we'll deal with that. It wasn't even given to Joseph, right? The house of Israel lived through 430 years in Egypt, and we know that's not true. He says, and they were never given the Sabbath law. See, he just made inconsistent statement after statement after statement, right? So this is somebody that you know is not learned in the scriptures, but that's somebody that they will cleave to with that confirmation bias and will believe him over what the word says. All right, so let's give it to you plain and simple. The Shabbat, or the Sabbath before Moses, right? Genesis chapter 2 and verse 1. All right, takes us back to Bereshit, or Genesis. It says, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their array, right? It says, in the seventh day, Elohim completed his work, which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work, which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and set it apart, right? He says that the Most High blessed it that day, set it apart, but nobody observed it from then all the way up until Moses on Mount Sinai, right? That doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. It says, and Elohim blessed the seventh day and set it apart, because on it he rested from all his work which Elohim in creating had made, right? Let's keep it moving, right? Looking at Mark chapter 2, looking at verse 27, it says, and he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. A lot of people use this scripture to say, saying Christ broke, either they say he broke the law, which he didn't, or they'll say this gives them credence and excuse not to keep the law. All right, so let's deal with it. The Most High created for 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. So who did he create on the sixth day? Right? That's why you have to read the scripture, and then you have to, go into your Greek lexicon and get the word for the man, right? And it'll put it in perfect perspective. It says, and he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for the man. Who is the man, right? I can't read Greek, but the translation from the Greek, the man equals Adam. He was talking about Adam. He had created Adam on the sixth day. So on the seventh day, Christ is telling you, he said to them, the Sabbath was made for Adam, and not Adam for the Sabbath, right? Just so you can get that in the perfect perspective. So when an individual tells you that the Most High rested on the Sabbath, but he didn't introduce the Sabbath until Mount Sinai, that's a lie. And Christ just told you right here that that's a lie. He created the Sabbath for Adam, right? So that means Adam and his sons and them had to been keeping them up, had to be keeping the law or the Sabbath. It is what it is. Looking at Genesis chapter 5 and 24, it says, and Enoch walked with Elohim. Then he was no more, for Elohim took him. So what does walked with Elohim mean? What does it mean? Right? And we're not going to give it our own interpretation. We can imagine it means him being in fellowship and agreement, or, you know what I'm saying? How can two walk together unless they, you know what I'm saying, agree? But it is what it is. Proverbs chapter 20 and 24, it says, the steps of a man are ordered from Yahweh. What does a man know about his own way? So how can Enoch be walking with Elohim and doing his own thing, right? How can Enoch be walking with Elohim and not honoring the Sabbath day? That makes no sense, right? Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 5 says, by belief, by faith, Enoch was translated so as not to see death, and was not found because Elohim had translated him. For before his translation, he obtained witness that he pleased Elohim, right? So how is he pleasing Elohim when, you know what I'm saying, and not keeping the Sabbath day? That's a common sense question, right? And still dealing with the Sabbath before Moses, all right? Noah was a preacher of righteousness, right? So let's get it. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 8, all right, 8 and 9, it says, but Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh, right? This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with Elohim, right? Just like the same witness that Enoch got before he got taken, you know what I'm saying? Noah obtained that same witness. It says in 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 5, and did not spare the world of old, but preserved Noah, a proclaimer of righteousness, right? So that just takes us back to that conversation when we say that Noah preached for however long he preached, but he had to have something to preach. When they say the laws didn't come into effect or didn't exist, that's the apologetics view. Those laws didn't exist until Mount Sinai. This is telling you right here, yes, they did. There were laws that existed before Mount Sinai. Or how else would Noah be a preacher of righteousness? There has to be a contrast from righteousness and wickedness. It is what it is. Let me read that again. 2 Peter chapter 2 and 5, it says, and did not spare the word of old, but preserved Noah, a proclaimer of righteousness, and 7 others, bringing in the flood on the world of the wicked, right? There had to have been something that established Noah as righteous and something that established these people as wicked, right? And it has to, and the one thing that the Most High showed us in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 3 is that he separated or set apart the Sabbath day, right? And then we understood when Christ said that the Sabbath was made for Adam, right? The day after the Most High created Adam, and not Adam for the Sabbath. That's telling you right there that these people, when he's preaching righteousness, he's telling them what thus saith the Most High. Okay, it is what it is. Let's keep it moving. Genesis chapter 26 verses 4 and 5, right? Because he brought up Abraham, said Abraham didn't even keep it. But it is what it is. He says, and he's speaking of Abraham, he says, and I shall increase your seed like the stars of heaven, and I shall give all these lands to your seed, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice, guarded my charge, my commands, my laws, and my Torah, right? So you can't listen to this apologetic who's giving you the excuse that the Sabbath didn't exist, so on and so forth. Or how would Abraham be obeying the Most High's commands, laws, and his Torah? It is what it is. So that just destroyed everything that idiot said. It is what it is. Let's look in Exodus chapter 16, right? In verse 4 and 5, it says, Yahushua said to Moses, see, I am raining bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day in order to try them, whether they walk in my Torah or not. Right? So this is when he's talking about, when before he said, and Abraham walked in my laws, kept my commands, my laws, and my Torah, right? The Torah was already established before Moses got to Mount Sinai. They're on their way there. Okay. And verse 5, it says, and it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Right. Jumping into verses 22 through 25, it says, and it came to be on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much. All right. 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said to them, this is what Yahweh said. Tomorrow is a rest, a Sabbath set apart to Yahweh. That which ye bake, bake, and that which ye cook, cook, and lay up for yourselves all that is left over to keep until morning. Right. So a lot of people, might raise the question, well, why is he telling them how to honor the Sabbath day if they were already honoring it? The thing was, they just suffered over 200 something years in captivity in Egypt. Right. We already established through the study of prophecy that they were never in Egypt for no 430 years. Right. So, not to confuse you, but when they were in captivity, they were made to not keep the law. So since he was bringing them out of captivity, now they're being reintroduced to the Most High's law, statutes, and commandments. Right. And mainly his Torah, because his Torah is that important to him. Let's keep reading. Verse 24 says, and they laid it up until morning, and Moses commanded, and it did not stink. Right. And no worm was in it. And Moses said, eat it today. For today is a Sabbath to you. Yeah. All right. To Salakia is a Sabbath to Yahweh. Today you will not find it in the field. Right. So he's giving them precedence. That's why we cook 2 meals on Friday, on what we call preparation day. So that way we don't have to find ourselves cooking on the Sabbath day. Whatever we need to purchase, we purchase it on preparation day. Whatever work we need to do, to make sure we don't have to do it on the Sabbath, we do it on preparation day. Same principle being taught to these people who are coming out of captivity. And it's the same principle that it needs to be taught to the so-called black Christian who's waking up to the Most High's truth and understanding who he is. You have to get back to keeping the Most High's law, statutes, and commandments, right? And just like anything, it may be uncomfortable at first, but the more you do it repetitively, it gets easier and easier until it becomes normal. Just like when you first started going to church, but it is what it is, right? Still dealing with the Sabbath before Mount Sinai. All right. Sin is the transgression of the law. We know that much. All right. How the brothers were instructed regarding worship of Elohim, the reader is not informed, right? And that's the apologetics advantage or so-called seemingly advantage, since it didn't speak about the Most High telling them verbatim, what to do in order to sacrifice, so on and so forth. Here, brushes it off as if it wasn't a thing. But it is what it is. That just, regulates a person's common sense. But let's keep it moving. All right. How the brothers were instructed regarding the worship of Elohim, the reader is not informed. Yet it is apparent that knowledge of the means of this worship is known. Cain / murder and lying. All right. Genesis 4, 3 through 16. This narrative is a tragic account of sin's rapid degradation of human nature. Long before the commandment against murder was proclaimed from Mount Sinai, Cain kills his brother Abel. This horrifying deed is obviously stressed, for the word brother is repeated over and over in the passage. When Elohim addressed Cain, he cites the relationship 3 times in the verses, all right, in verses 9 through 11. Within Genesis chapter 4, 1 through 17, Abel and brother occurs 7 times. These repetitions draw the reader's attention to the heinous nature of the crime. Like the Most High did not look, upon that, and then understand the warning that he gave Cain. He said, if you do not well, all right, will you not be accepted? He said, but be careful, for sin, all right, sin crouches at the door, right? And he didn't heed the Most High's warning and killed his brother, right? It is what it is. Justice existed before Moses, right? Retributive justice is not set in motion with the Mosaic covenant in Exodus. It is already apparent in regard to this first tragic murder. Cain himself acknowledges his guilt and does not complain that Elohim is too harsh towards him. He knows that he did wrong, right? It says, He is only worried that other people might treat him unfairly or kill him. All right, Genesis chapter 4 narrative of Cain's murder of his brother also reveals and underscores the sacredness of human life in Elohim's eyes. It is the same affirmation of life that is implied later in the sixth commandment of the Decalogue, or the 10 Commandments, all right, which forbids murder. All right. So from the vantage point of that apologetic, it wouldn't be a law against murder if it wasn't stated by Moses after he got the laws on Mount Sinai. That's rubbish and that's craziness. And I just brought this whole parallel because you have to understand that sin is the transgression of the law. I brought this parallel to show you that after Genesis chapter 2 and verse 3, when the Most High set the Sabbath apart, it was still a law, right? It was still established. So we made easy work of this dude. You know what I mean? They kept the Sabbath. It is what it is. And another thing, matter of fact, I'm not going to keep, you know what I'm saying, going back and forth about this dude. All right. You just can't sit with liars and expect to learn the truth. So you got to get past that hypocritical confirmation bias, listening to people that agree with what you already stand for. Listen to what the scripture says. Okay. So let's get back to the historical accounts, right? Here's a statement from Dr. Gilbert Murray. All right. He says, professor of Greek at Oxford University. All right. Who certainly had an axe to grind against Christian thought on the Sabbath question. He wrote, now, since Mithra was the sun, all right, the unconquered, and the sun was the royal star, the religion looked for a king whom it could serve as a representative of Mithras upon earth. The Roman emperor, talking about Constantine, seemed to be clearly indicated as the true king. In sharp contrast to Christianity, Mithraism recognized Caesar as their bearer of divine grace. It had so much acceptance that it was able to impose on the Christian world its own Sunday in place of the Sabbath, its son's birthday, the 25th of December, as the birthday of Jesus, historically of Christianity in the light of modern knowledge. That's the name of the book. But just going into some historical evidence to show you, you know what I'm saying, the biasness and the changes, you know what I mean? It was all political, right? Don't be religiously ignorant, right? Study to show thyself approved, all right, unto Elohim, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, right? More historical accounts, right? Dr. William Frederick says, the Gentiles were an adulterous people who worshiped the sun, and Sunday was their most sacred day. Now, in order to reach the people in this new field, it seems but natural, as well as necessary, to make Sunday the rest day of the church. At this time, it was necessary for the church to either adopt the Gentiles' day or else have the Gentiles change their day. Now, to change the Gentiles' day would have been an offense and a stumbling block to them. All right. But the church, it says the church could not naturally reach them better. The church could naturally reach them better by keeping their day. Like, you know what I'm saying? That compromise wasn't going to hurt. It is what it is. There it is, friends. A clear explanation by Dr. Frederick, all right, as to how the change happened. Another statement very parallel to this one is found in the North British Review. Right. So the concept was, all right, we're going to make these compromises. So, you know what I mean? They'll come in and be under the umbrella of Christianity, so on and so forth. Even though if you read in the scriptures, the Most High is so against all of that. Right. So what was actually taking place? The narrative is that the so-called Christians were converting pagans into Christians. But the truth of the matter is the pagans were converting the Christians into pagans. They were just keeping the name Christianity and sun worship. It is what it is. All right. Let's move on to a statement from the Catholic Encyclopedia, volume 4, page 153. The church, after changing the day of rest from the Father's Sabbath, or the seventh day of the week, to the first, made the first commandment refer to, made the third commandment refer to Sunday as the day to be kept holy as the Lord's day. So not only were these people bold enough to change the Most High's day from the Sabbath to Sunday, they were bold enough to rewrite the 10 Commandments, right? In the 10 Commandments, we know that the fourth commandment is to honor the Sabbath day and keep it set apart, right? Well, in the Catholics' rendition of the 10 Commandments, they changed the fourth into the third, right? And they told you to honor the Lord's day, talking about the Sunday, so on and so forth. Them diabolical devils, and they still listen to these people today. right? That's why we tell you to give, you know what I mean? Get that Christianity thing back and start getting into this Bible and obeying the Most High, right? It says, this is from the same what is it? Not encyclopedia. Yeah, it's the encyclopedia. Let me go back real quick because I want to make sure. All right. Yeah, so we're talking about the Catholic Encyclopedia. All right. Talking about the Catholic Encyclopedia, it says the early believers kept Saturday as the Sabbath until March 7th, right? 321 current era, when Pope Constantine passed a law requiring believers to worship on Sunday, the day the pagans worshiped the sun god. Believers still kept Saturday as the Sabbath until another law was passed 11 years later. This law, signed into decree by Pope Constantine, forbid believers to worship on the Sabbath day, and it was punishable by death by the Catholic Church, right? So people were being put to death for obeying the scriptures, right? For obeying God. And that thing repetitively taught to us, you know what I mean, through tradition, you know what I'm saying, had us all going to church on Sunday. But understand that when they tried to obey the scriptures and keep the Sabbath day, Emperor Constantine was putting them to death. Right? It is what it is. That's and that goes into the parallel of the scripture where the Most High says the love of the world is enmity towards Elohim. Right? It is what it is. Many believers were burned to death by the Catholic Church for keeping the Sabbath. Think that Sunday worship is it, right? Oh, my bad. I got my finger on the pulse. So I didn't move. All right. And finally, the Catholics of Catholicism takes credit for the change. This is what they're saying. Now, a quote from the Catholic Press newspaper in Sydney, Australia. Sunday is the Catholic institution, and its claims to observance can be defended only on Catholic principles. From the beginning to end of the scripture, there is not a single passage that warrants the transfer of the weekly public worship from the last day of the week to the first. Right. The Catholic Mirror of September 23rd, 1894 puts it this way, right? The Catholic Church, for over 1,000 years before the existence of a Protestant, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday. Talking about we're so, you know what I mean, authoritative, and God gave us this authority that we have the power to take the Sabbath day from Saturday and put it on Sunday, right? All right, one more statement taken from the book The Faith of Millions on page 473 says, but since Saturday, not Sunday, is specified in the Bible, isn't it curious that non-Catholics who profess to take their religion directly from the Bible and not from the church observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Isn't that weird? Even if you're a Baptist, apostolic, you're still going to church on Sunday instead of the Sabbath. You're not honoring it. It says, yes, of course. It is inconsistency, but this change was made about 15 centuries before Protestantism was born. And by that time, the custom was universally observed. They have continued the custom even though it rests upon the authority of the Catholic Church and not upon an explicit text from the Bible, right? So those of you who think that you have separated yourself from Catholicism, no, you haven't. You know what I'm saying? The Catholic Church is still your mother. That's why you honor, and that's why you go to church on Sunday and you forsake the Sabbath, right? It says that observance remains as a reminder of the mother church, from which the non-Catholic sects broke away like a boy running away from home, but still carrying the lock, carrying in his pocket a picture of his mother or the lock of her hair, right? It is what it is. The Most High's word trumps all traditions, or it at least should. In your heart and in your mind, if you know that, you know what I'm saying, you're going to pass into eternity, the Most High's word should trump all traditions, regardless of how you were brought up and how you were raised, right? The Torah is meant for our protection, correction, direction, and salvation. The Torah makes us wise unto salvation through faith. So let's work out our salvation through obedience, right? Exodus chapter 31, looking at verses 16 through 17 says, and the children of Israel shall guard the Sabbath, to perform the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant, right? If you're reading that, dear Christian, understand that the Most High means it. He says, and the children of Israel shall guard the Sabbath to perform the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant, right? If you're in a covenant relationship with the Most High, all right, the seal of that covenant is you honoring the Sabbath day. If you're not honoring the Sabbath day, you will have no covenant with the Most High, and there's your salvation, right? Gone in the trash, right? It says, between me and the children of Israel, it is a sign forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Right? So, according to Psalms 40 and 8, you go into the kingdom of heaven without doing the will of the Father, how? Right? And we can also get that in Matthew 7 and 23. All right, 21 through 23. Right? Let's get 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1. All right? It says, this is the third time I am coming to you. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. All right. So 3 witnesses testify about the Sabbath, and we have what? History, which we just looked at, all of the historical texts or references of the change, how these people thought they had the authority to change what the Most High said in the scripture. We have the contemporary, how we still have folks getting up, you know what I mean, or folks working on the Sabbath day, cooking on the Sabbath day, and then getting up and going to church on Sunday, right? We still have that. So we have the contemporary, and we have what the scriptures say, right? To confirm it. It is what it is. Right. So let's get to this conclusion and get on up out of here. You know what I mean? We ain't here to stay. And yeah, it didn't take us. Let me see. I think that was 40 something slides, and it only took us an hour. So I think we did pretty good. We did all right. And then I'm gonna put this in the comments. But anyways, the definition of stupid is knowing the truth, seeing the evidence of the truth, but still believing the lie, right? And this goes to all of the people that are still going to be climbing up in church on Sunday, even though we brought out all of this proof about the honoring the Sabbath day, how important it is to the Most High. We can always go deeper, right? I'm gonna do a study where the scriptures gives us the instructions on how to honor the Sabbath day, the things we're asked to do, the things we're asked not to do, we're prohibited from doing, right? And then understanding what's profane in the eyes of the Most High. One of the things that he loves is the fact that his children are obedient, right? So it is what it is. We're not gonna hold you all day. The good brother Chick is in the building. Hold on, let me get you, fam. All right, brother Chick, come in and give us some wisdom. Good to see you. Shabbat
Good to
shalom,
see
man.
you, bro. Shabbat shalom. And I didn't have much to add. I think you hit everything on the head. But I did want to just provide encouragement. You know, letting you know it's for people who are new to celebrating the Sabbath. It's not as difficult as people make it. You know, I remember when I first started honoring myself. I remember my mother telling a family friend and them come running over the house acting as if I was sitting over there with the lights off. You know what I'm saying? Afraid to move. You know, you don't have to. And it's not like that. It's not like that at all. We set this day apart. You know what I'm saying? We make it different. We make it special. You know, I still eat good. I get on here and enjoy my time with you. You know, I still, when I'm done reading, I'll turn on the TV and watch something. I may not watch, ridiculous things that I may let slide during the week, but I still have a good day. You know, the difference is I'm getting the rest that I need. You know what I'm saying? That's what my children, when they were younger and living at home, that's what they talked about. They look forward to, because we're ripping and running every day. The world is made for us to be ripping and running and distracted every day. I look forward to that one day when I know I'm going to sit on that couch. I'm going to read. I may take a nap. I'm going to eat better than I ate all week. You know what I'm saying? Because I have a reason to. I'm not going to be all caught up in my diet. And I'm going to get some rest, and I'm going to get close to the Most High, and I'm going to study something that maybe there was something during the week that I was thinking about scripturally that I was like, I need to check into that. On the Sabbath, I'm going to sit down and really dig into that. You know what I'm saying? I think people who haven't started, they think it's something really stringent, and it doesn't have to be. And I would just encourage people, just start small. You know, I didn't know what I was going to do when I first started. Just start small and see how you can add to it, and be good to yourself. Accept that you may slip up. I've been honoring the Sabbath for, I gotta say, probably over a decade now. I still slip up. There's still Saturdays I wake up and go, oh man, I forgot to do this, and this. Okay, let me figure out how to work around that. That's on me. I got too busy during the week. It's days when I've been so busy that Friday that I sleep. I'll sleep through Bible study and I wake up like, dang, all right, well, let me watch the replay. Let me get my read on still, so give yourself some grace when you're just starting and understand that the world has made it really hard for us to honor this correctly. So give yourself time to get that good habit of doing it in a way that's acceptable and a way you can feel proud of. But that's all I really had. I just want to provide encouragement because I feel like you hit everything scripturally on the head to where I had nothing to add. And I appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate you too, Rock, and thanks for that encouragement. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people need to see it from that advantage point. They look at the Sabbath as a burden. You know what I'm saying? Especially since the world gives us this day off from work a lot. You know what I mean? For a lot of us, it's the only day that we get to go and do what we need to do in order to prepare for the next day, so on and so forth. So I can see how it can be a burden, but at the same time, like you brought out, brother, you know what I'm saying? Once you do this thing and you get repetitive with it, it becomes comfortable and it's a refreshing thing. And one of the things that I like to point out as not only is keeping the Sabbath a covenant with you and the Most High, right? It's also one of those things that separates you from the world. And it brings home the point that I always bring when I tell people the only way to separate yourself from this world is to keep the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments, right? And keeping the Sabbath day is a blaring example of one of those separation points and factors, because you have a lot of people who can't, imagine, getting somewhere and sitting down on Saturday Friday night, and Saturday. No, I'm not doing that. And there's a lot of pastors who won't teach it, right? Because they're used to the comfortability of what's been traditionally taught. But we're not going to overtalk it. We'll get back to keeping the Sabbath lectures, in the near future, and we'll go into detail about what the scripture says, what we must do and what we must refrain from doing, to get a little bit more detailed. All right. But with that being the case, that's SHABBAT Bible study. Thanks for everybody, for coming through, those who stuck through the lesson, even though I was fumbling with the reading at times. Thanks for sticking with us. We just ask that those of you who do honor the Sabbath day and keep it set apart, that you enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. Thanks for taking time out with us as we give our attention to the Most High. And thanks for everybody that encourages us, to keep pushing, even when, we have all of these different distractions. So if you're praying, keep praying. We appreciate it. We're praying for you as well. And if I don't want to call out shout outs, but Shabbat Shalom to those that I do know are here. Akira, Shabbat Shalom, Brother Emmanuel, Shabbat Shalom, Sister Alice, Shabbat Shalom, Brother Chick, of course, Shabbat Shalom, Brother Brian Wood, Shabbat Shalom, Sister Yasatar de La Paz, and Sister Yakahana, Shabbat Shalom to y'all, and thanks for sharing the video. And that's it. We're going to go on and get up out of here. So everybody, enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.